service in the house.
Bucket hat. It's bucket hat time.
TC, you're undefeated, man. You're undefeated.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the TC and Company podcast. Tom Caron with you here at Fenway Park, where it is raining again. As we come to you, nothing new there. It rained Friday night as hard as I have ever seen it here at Fenway Park, and that's in more than a quarter century of working here. It was absolutely torrential. A monsoon that forced the suspended game, which was made up on Saturday in the afternoon. Red Sox lost that game as first game of the series to the Mets, but then came back with a pair of wins. Good one Saturday night, where they hit 4 home runs off Max Scherzer, 5 home runs overall, and then Sunday Night Baseball, another win. Interesting to hear the Sunday Night Baseball crew on ESPN say 2 teams headed in opposite directions. It tells you something about the high-salaried Mets and the Red Sox, who at this point have the best record in the league in July. So they're doing some things right. Now, we come to you 1 week away from the trade deadline, and the first shoe has fallen, as they say. Kiké Hernández moved to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not a huge surprise. Pablo Reyes returning from his injury. Trevor Story rehabbing in Worcester this week on the horizon. So middle infield moves had to be made. And Kiké Hernández, quite frankly, was having trouble finding playing time. Adam Duvall and Jarren Duran, obviously ahead of him in the outfield mix now. And you've got Yu Chang, who has solidified the shortstop position. So another former Red Sox player goes to the Dodgers, although in this case it is a former Dodger returning to the place where he became such an important part of a championship team there. Chaim Bloom, Chief Baseball Officer of the Red Sox, joined me in studio on NESN's pregame show to talk about the deal. All right, moments ago it became official, the trade of Kiké Hernández back to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Chief Baseball Officer Chaim Bloom joins us. Chaim, take us through this a little bit. Obviously, we knew there was a bit of a roster crunch coming. Pablo Reyes is back, Chang is here, Story rehabbing. Chance came to maybe make a move. How did it come together with the Dodgers for it to be Kiké?
Yeah, well, first of all, before we get into this, I just want to say thank you to Kiké Hernández and to his family. This guy, obviously, for the last 2+ years, became a huge part of our organization. Obviously, everything that went on in 21, he was right in the middle of that. When he decided to come back here last year, he was probably our best recruiter this offseason and just instrumental in a lot of what went on. Loves what everything about Boston and the Red Sox experience is about. Obviously, it's a business, and this trade came together because of what you mentioned. This trade and the timing of it, just with us finally being in a position where we have a little bit of a logjam in the infield. Earlier in the season, we were at a point where we were scouring the world for middle infielders, and we got to a point now where we were in a better place with that, and that leads to some tough decisions. And around this time of year, we're already having a lot of conversations with other clubs. Obviously, the Dodgers know Kiké well. They appreciate those same things about him that we appreciate. And he filled a need for them. And, in return, we were able to get some pitchers that we're excited about. And that's obviously something that we can use as well. So something that I think just fit everybody's needs from a baseball standpoint. But, first and foremost, from the personal side of it, not easy because of how much he means to us. But, it is part of the game.
And not to ever overlook what he did in 2021. I mean, for the better part of 6 weeks, he might have been the best offensive player in baseball.
Yeah, and that was unbelievable. And really the entire second half of that year, he really drove us. He was, he became our leadoff hitter and was a huge part of everything that went on and who he was in the clubhouse, who he was for the organization. Like I said, this guy embraced everything that makes this place special. As we talk about a lot, it's not for everybody. And he appreciates it. He likes the lights. He likes, what makes the Boston baseball experience great, and contributed some things here that we're not going to forget.
Have you, and we'll get to the deal again in a second, but as you've grown into this role over the 4 years here, have you found that guys like that help you construct the roster the way you want it. You know, you said he's a recruiter in ways. He was out spreading the gospel of what happens here. Players sometimes can do a better job of that than you or I or anybody, right?
Yeah,
so is it important to have guys like that who have a voice like that?
Yeah, they're living it. And, I get it. I mean, you're going to want to listen to somebody who you feel is walking in the shoes that you might be walking in. And, that's huge. And obviously that can come in so many different forms. We want all of our players. Our players are our best ambassadors, and we want all of them to, in their own way, do that for us. But, you really come to appreciate the guys who do that well.
All right, the pitchers you get back, Nick Robertson and Justin Hagenman. Robertson, I think, ranked 25th on the ranking I saw of their organization. Tell us a little about these two arms.
Yeah, excited to get both of them. This is something, obviously, you never have enough pitching, and these guys being in the upper levels and Nick having gotten a taste of the big leagues, we're excited about what they can bring to the table to help us. Nick Robertson is, when he walks in the door, you'll know why he's here. He's a big guy. And has really done a nice job on AAA. And like I said, got his first taste of the big leagues this year with the Dodgers. Hard thrower with a plus fastball, a really good changeup that's become a weapon for him against both sides. He also has a hard slider that he's used against righties. And, we have, obviously, there's 30 teams are in flux with their pitching staff, right? You never have enough pitching in today's game. And, this guy obviously has proven a lot at AAA. That's where we've sent him. But, I would expect he might be in position to help us out and has the stuff and has the tools really to help us get guys out in the big leagues, and that's something that we could use.
Hagenman had done a little bit of starting right before the All-Star break. I think they had him more in a bulk role in AAA now. Do you look at both of these guys right now as relievers when they arrive? Or
Yeah, I think most likely we want to get to know him. With Hagenman, he's got obviously some different experiences under his belt. He's always been a really good strike thrower. The stuff's come on as he's come up through the system. There's something to be said for a guy that you can count on to come into a game with a deep repertoire and throw strikes. There's always going to be a place for those guys. We'll see, obviously, as we get him going. He's been used, like you said, in that multi-inning capacity. Would expect that's what happens going forward, but, we have had a lot of starting opportunity in Worcester, and we might take a look at him there, too. We'll see.
Interesting, today was a deadline in some ways, right? Because Reyes was coming back. You're going to lose a player if you can't make a trade. We all think of next Tuesday as the deadline, but when you have situations like this, is there more pressure on an organization to get something done in time to make the roster moves when they need to be made?
Yeah, just accelerate some of the conversations that you have. I mean, we happen to be having some of them already. It's trade deadline season, so you're talking about all your players and all of everybody else's players, right? That's how this works. But with this, knowing Pablo was back, and obviously we were going to get some other guys back on the pitching side, this timing made sense for us to make some kind of a move. So the clubs that we were talking to about different possibilities, we wanted to accelerate those conversations, not at the expense of making the right move for the organization, but if we were able to line up on that right move, this was a timetable that worked for us, and we were able to do it.
Jarren Duran factors into this, right? Because one of the places Kiké would have gone back to is center field. But with Duran and Duvall now, it had become to a point where it was difficult to get everybody on the field.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there is no place where you say, hey, we've got too many players, right? You never should sit here and be so cavalier as to say you're not going to miss some things somebody can do, but you have to give to get, and we like what we got in this deal as well. And obviously you can only have 26 active at any one time, and really going back to when Adam got hurt, what Jarren has been able to do is and the season that he's having has really changed the picture for us in a very good way.
On a night like Saturday night, when he leads off with a home run off Scherzer, when Tristan Casas gets 2 home runs, I think the first rookie with 2 home runs in a game off Scherzer. I said at the time that was a night, and you see it every night because you're looking at it differently than we are. But as a fan, Saturday night was a night where you say, okay, the future starts to look pretty good, and the future isn't years away. On nights like that, does it feel good? Well, when the young guys,
yeah. Well, not only do you take wins in any way, shape, or form, but when guys that we have invested a lot in, blood, sweat, and tears on behalf of a lot of people in this organization, and also guys that we want to be part of this core and that we're counting on, when those guys step up and win games for you, it's a good feeling. And that really is kind of the central pillar of how we're thinking about this. And I think this summer we're starting to see, it's not just some far off thing that we're asking everybody to close their eyes and dream on. You're starting to see it show up more and more on a nightly basis. Now, you only have to look at that scoreboard to know we're not where we want to be yet, but you can see things coming together, and our main objective right now is just to keep building on that.
All right, next Tuesday is the trade deadline. You get right back at it now. Is it active? Is the volume of conversation picking up now?
Yeah, really. Now in this new schedule, we get a couple days to take a breather after the draft, and then everybody dives right back in. And now we're a week out, and it's really active, and it's only just going to increase as we get closer. The nature of this thing is that there's always a flurry at the end, right? There's always the last hour, the last 24 hours, last 48 hours is when most of the action happens. But there are conversations happening right now. Like you said, the timing around this one was unique and driven by some other considerations that we had with our roster. But we're really at a point where we're talking to 29 clubs almost constantly, updating each other on our situations, getting back to each other, feeling out different concepts, who's really willing to do what, what is really possible. I think that's what a lot of this week is about, is trying to figure out what's worth spending your time on as far as your scouts' time, your front office's time, and where are the opportunities really to improve your organization.
We appreciate you taking 5 minutes away from it to talk to us. Thanks for the info. Chaim Bloom with us, our weekly visit. Timed out well for us, too. Thank you for that. All of this happening just before the Atlanta Braves took the field for the first of two games. Final two home games for the Red Sox in the month of July, and a real test after a 12-game stretch of playing teams with sub-500 records, 6 against the Oakland A's. You also had the Mets in there, as we said over the weekend, the Cubs part of that stretch as well. Now you get the Braves, who have the best record in Major League Baseball. 30 games over 500, an 11.5 game lead in the National League East. Tom Glavine, the Hall of Famer, such a great pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, but he's one of us. He's from up here, Bill Ricca's own. A good hockey player, too, so he got to town with Patrice Bergeron announcing his retirement. So we'll get to a little hockey talk, but first, talking with Tom Glavine about the Braves and about what it's like to come on back home after all these years. Tom Glavine, the Hall of Famer, the guest this week on the TC and Company podcast. So, Tom, we were down in Atlanta. It was back in May, and you guys at that point seemed to be kind of figuring out. You've obviously figured it out since, though there have been ups and downs. This team has really put it together well, and yet 2 relievers added yesterday. It really feels like Anthopoulos is trying to still tweak this team to get the most out of it.
Hey, I think he's one of those GMs that I don't want to say that he's never satisfied, but he's always looking for ways to get better. And I think in this day and age, every team would tell you can never have enough arms. So I think he's tried to at least address that aspect, certainly with some of the injuries they've had both in the rotation and in the bullpen. So 2 good arms for some depth in the bullpen. And, I would suspect he's not done, but at the same time, he's not a guy that's going to give up the farm just to make a trade. If it makes sense, he'll do it, but I'm sure he's going to keep scouring the market.
Organization does such an amazing job locking guys up. I mean, you look at that lineup and you say, okay, you can see what this organization is going to be for the next few years. Watching it come together over the last couple of years, what's impressed you most at their sort of roster construction, the team building they've done?
I think it's the same thing they've really done for a long time, which is develop guys. They've done a really good job over the years of developing players. Now, for a while there, during my generation and maybe a little bit beyond, it was mostly pitching. Now you've seen an influx of everyday players. It's just been really remarkable to watch what they've done, where they've come from, what they've turned into as big league players. And I think every one of those guys, Acuna obviously was very highly touted. Everybody knew he was going to be a really good player, just a matter of how good he was going to be. I think the rest of those guys, Austin Riley, Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies, I think we all knew they were good players, but curious to see where they went, and they've all really grown into really, really good players and guys that just go out there and play every single day, which is a huge luxury.
Because of that construction and guys locked up, is there a little less of a feeling that, someone might go because the trade deadline's next week, or because, as you said, it is an organization that tends to always try to make a little tweak? Is there a little of that? All right, let's see who's here next Wednesday.
I think so. Look, I would be really shocked if they traded any one of their young guys that they have locked up. But at the same time, those are guys obviously that are attractive to move, right? That's the hard part about moving guys at the deadline, is either you have guys that are pending free agents or you have some of these exorbitant contracts that teams don't want to take on. Their young guys are all locked up to what I think everybody would consider a pretty team-friendly contract. So if they ever wanted to do that, I think they could. I don't think they would. I think they'd try to do something on the periphery But at the same time, I think, again, this is a team that, can they get better? Yeah, every team can get better. If they did nothing, are they still in really good shape? Yeah, and that's a pretty good space to be in as an organization.
It's been at least a couple of years since the Braves have traded for Adam Duvall, and there's talk that he might be on their radar again.
Well, he could be. I mean, look, he's been a guy that has come over to the organization this time of year a couple of times and just really caught fire. So, you never know. I wouldn't put it past anything. I mean, I think that's the one area maybe the Braves probably do have some depth, is in the outfield. But look, again, I think if hypothetically Adam's available and it made sense to the Braves, I think it's something that Alex certainly would look at. I don't think Alex is the kind of guy that's ever not going to look or not at least be interested in it, but it certainly would have to make sense. But it's a pretty crowded outfield right now. Those guys are playing pretty well.
Sox were down at Truist in May. They've changed a lot since then. As you come into a series like this, and I like to talk to outsiders about the Sox because they give a fresh perspective. You're probably not a true outsider because you hear a lot of it from back home. But what's your impression of this team? Because I think they've surprised a lot of people by kind of flirting around that wild card
I think
race.
They have too. I mean, look, as a outsider, somewhat still paying attention. I'm probably like a lot of people. I wasn't sure what they were going to be this year. I think a lot of it obviously depended on how healthy they stayed, which has not really been great. I mean, they've had their share of injuries. So, but they've always been a team that seems to have some grit, and somewhere, not too long ago, they found something. I think when they went into Toronto and swept Toronto up there, something seemed to click for these guys, and they've been a different ball club since. And I think that's so much a part of the battle. It doesn't necessarily matter what everybody outside your room is saying about you. If you guys in the room think that you can compete, that goes further than anything else. And I think that Toronto series, for whatever reason, I think made these guys feel like they can compete, and they've come every day since then playing hard and been a team that I don't think too many teams are getting ready to play these guys thinking, hey, this is a 3-game series that we're going to win 2 out of 3 and fatten our stats. They know they're going to be in for a battle.
Sox have had to go to the opener route, but I feel the game is getting away from that. Where it looked
I
like,
hope so.
right? I mean, it looked like that's where we were going, but length seems to matter again. Guys are going 6, 7, 8 innings more than I thought we would.
Yeah, even the Braves did that for a little while.
Yeah.
When Fried went down, Kyle Wright went down, and they kind of tried to do the opener thing, and it didn't go real well. And then they made the decision they were going to start calling some of your younger guys up and giving them an opportunity. Now it's kind of been a little bit of a revolving door. None of those young guys have really stuck and grabbed that 5th spot in the rotation. But I'm with you. I would much rather see a team give a young guy an opportunity and let's see what he can do. I mean, to me, it's like, what do you have to lose? Versus the alternative of you have that bullpen game, and now a lot of times you're forced to make roster moves because of it. You don't want to be shorthanded for a couple days. I'm a firm believer in give a young guy an opportunity to go out there. You might be surprised.
You mentioned Fried and Wright. I think people forget that you could get both these guys back for the drive.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we talk about trade deadline, right? Max Fried's close. I think I would be surprised if maybe he had one more rehab start and he's back in the rotation. So you get a guy like that back midseason, that's like a trade itself, right? I mean, that's a big shot in the arm, no pun intended, to this team. You forget that they've done what they've done this year without him and their 20-game winner from last year, Kyle Wright. So I think they could potentially be in a really good position going down the stretch, getting both of those guys back and both being fresh going into September and the postseason.
All right, you're here to work, but you turned it into a little back-home getaway. What's the first thing? Tom Glavine gets back to Boston, gets back to New England. What's the first thing he does?
Oh God! Well, try to see all my brothers and sister and all that stuff, but. Probably having a piece of pizza somewhere. Probably having a sub somewhere.
Oh, name a place. Come on, give us a place. What's the go-to
there's
pizza
a place right down the street from my house, my parents' house in Billerica, Milano's. So that's always pretty good pizza. So, I don't quite get as good a pizza down south as I do up here. So I look forward to it.
And Patrice Bergeron retiring as you come back. And you're a guy. You had a 22-year career. He went 19 years in the NHL. What advice do you? I mean, it's always tough when a professional athlete retires, right? It's a whole new phase of life. But when you've done it as long as you did, as he has, what's going to be the toughest challenge for Patrice Bergeron entering the real world?
I think, I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure most athletes are the same way. It's that internal clock that you're so used to that revolves around your seasons. I know for me, when I was done, it was that next spring training where it just felt weird. Like I hadn't been in Atlanta in February, and I couldn't tell you how long. So to be there in February was just a really weird feeling. But I think you tend to get used to it, and I think in Patrice's case, probably similar to my case, he's got a house full of kids at home, so he's going to I think, submerge himself in his kids and what they're doing, and I think that makes it for a little bit easier transaction.
A lot of knee hockey in the basement.
I'm sure,
right?
yes, 100%, yes.
You're such a hockey fan, and we're such a good hockey player, but Bergeron's one of those guys, like, if you're a hockey fan, like, I think if you're not a hockey fan, you don't get it.
Right.
Because he's not the flashy guy.
No.
Right? He's not even Marchand, who's, he's just the two-way guy who always got back, could win a face-off, could play in the defensive zone. He did everything.
I mean, he's the guy, Mr. Steady, right? And what a tremendous compliment that is for any athlete. When you know day in and day out what you're getting out of a guy, that's rarefied air to be in. So, and Patrice was that guy. And look, I've never met him, but I certainly admire him from watching him, not only how he goes about his business on the ice and plays the game and made everybody around him better, but he seems like genuinely a super nice guy and a great guy in the community. So, what a great role model for so many hockey kids here in Massachusetts to watch that guy for so many years.
Did you bring your skates north?
I have a pair here. There's always a pair here.
Have you called Cam? He's looking for a center.
I think those days are gone, but who knows? We can wallow in the memories a little bit and the what could haves, but those days are over.
Honestly, finally, Tom, back to baseball. Just what will it take for this Braves team to see it all the way through?
They just got to stay healthy. I mean, look, they have everything they need to win, and as we talked about, you get Max Fried back, and that's even better. But again, I know some of those teams that I played on back in the 90s with high expectations, we always knew in the back of our mind, expectations are great, but you're one injury away from those things going haywire, and I think that's the biggest thing for the Braves. If they stay healthy, then look, it's not to say that somebody can't beat them. I mean, that's baseball, right? You just never know in a short series once you get into the postseason. But I don't know that I would bet on anybody else going into the postseason if this team is healthy. So I think that's their biggest concern going forward.
I know I said final question. Let me ask you a follow-up on that. Are you a believer that you get that big cushion and you can rest guys, or does that sort of lead to you got to flip the switch and it's not always that easy?
It was always tough. Like I was never a believer on some of those teams I was on that when you got a big lead you could just coast and then flip a switch. I think you still have to play the game the right way. But you raise a good point. I mean, I think the Braves, if they get to that position where they maintain this lead and it gets late, that's one thing that I look at that maybe I get concerned about a little bit is they got 4, maybe 5 guys in the lineup that are going to play close to 162. So you want to, particularly Acuna, you want to give some, if you can, some of those guys a little bit of rest if you can down the stretch.
All right, the Tully Forum is. I think the ice goes in after you go back, so I don't think that works.
It might. You never know.
Appreciate the time, Tom. Thanks.
My pleasure.
So there you go. Going to be interesting to see what the Braves can do. Certainly, for my money, the best lineup in baseball. I think they're the best team in baseball, and you heard with the talk of Kyle Wright and Max Fried both coming back. They'll get pitching help without having to trade anybody, and we'll see what else they do for moves prior to next Tuesday's trade deadline. But for the Red Sox, it's real interesting to see what other deals will be coming now. Can the Red Sox find a way to bolster the pitching staff without giving away any of the key pieces of the future? Because I think it seems pretty clear now that you're seeing the future come together, and the future's not years away. It's now, as far as the lineup goes, Tristan Casas, the first rookie ever to hit multiple home runs off Max Scherzer. And then you have Jarren Duran doing exciting things every night. Connor Wong has settled in, 6th most innings behind the plate of any American League catcher. And these are all guys, 26, 27 and younger. Casas only 23. We've talked a lot about Bayo, really the ace of the staff now at 24. So I don't think there's any surprise that they'll need to add pitching, starting pitching. They need it now, and no matter what happens this year, they'll need it next year. So that'll be the task for Chaim Bloom. We'll see what happens, and when we come to you next week, it'll be after the trade deadline. We'll do a trade deadline recap next week, so hope you can join us then. I want to thank Tom Glavine for dropping by, and thank you for checking us out. It's another edition of the TC and Company podcast. I'm Tom Caron. We'll see you again next week.
Secret Service in the house.
Bucket hat. It's bucket hat time.
TC, you're undefeated, man. You're undefeated.